6-year-old, and this motorcycle flew by me, and the person fell off and died. And he's there, and basically no one was around. There were people around, but everyone just kind of watched it. And yesterday, when we were walking to our hotel, a similar thing happened. Someone flew by, he fell off the motorcycle, and everyone at the Seoul Future section stopped. I was stunned. 3 people ran to him, 1 picked him up, someone called an ambulance, a 3rd person checked if he was okay. And after all of that, in that instance, instead of everyone being anonymous, fragmented, it created a little community. So I was quite touched by that, and we were wondering what we should do, but all we could do was look at it. It was immediately became a thick community response to the event. So then I went back to when I was 6, somehow that wasn't there. So this, I've been thinking about futurists, whether futurists light, futurists heavy, whatever you want to say, non-futurists, it doesn't matter. Okay, we as humans have basically more power than we believe we have. So that's essentially what I want to talk about. I want to put together the earlier strands, very much touched by all the speakers, but I want to do a bit of macro thinking the next 1,000 years, and also a bit of tools. Here's some things you might need to do if I want to get good at this. When I was 10, our English teacher said to pass the course, you have to read 2 books a week. I was like, oh my God, are you crazy? I had Asian parents. They said, you better not just pass. Anything less than an A is unacceptable. So I read 2 books a week. And that semester went on forever, but at the end of it, I discovered Alpha Centauri. So I discovered science fiction. And my wife still gets very angry. She says, why do you watch that junk? It's atrocious. And we have long debates. I'm still trying to get her to love Alpha Centauri. If you don't know what Alpha Centauri is, look it up. So essentially, at the macro level, is Malthus, or in today's language, THANOS, is he right? His solution to the global probability, the Club of Rome told us about what seemed like decades ago, was easy, right? Collect the stones, snap the finger, and 50% of everyone on the planet is dead. Pretty easy, right? 8 billion people, get rid of 4 billion, more pad thai for all of us. So what does he do? He collects the stones. What stones does he collect? Stone number 1 is the extinction stone. Climate change, utter destruction by the end of this century. Of course, I'm exaggerating. If you're Siberian, very good times are coming. So there will be some winners, but most Asian cities will be finished, right? We know that. $32 trillion in the next 10 years is the real cost for Asian cities. So that's stone number 1. Now, one of the philosophers, a great Singapore philosopher, I see him as Singaporean, accidentally born in Trier. His name is Karl Marx. Chorfan forgot to talk about him, right? He had Malthus, Ricardo, and Schumpeter. As futurists, we love Schumpeter, but remember what Karl said. My son is 25. Anytime we're together, he only reads Marx to me. But as a 25-year-old, you should. So the second stone is the inequity stone. We know this dramatic rise in inequity since the Reagan Revolution. Between countries, between regions, and between individuals and the rest of the world. So this is stone number 2 you need to collect if you want to create the world THANOS imagined. Stone number 3 is tougher. It's the domination stone. One culture above, one below. If you want to dominate a culture, tell the others they're less than you. Right? They don't have the right shoes, the right language. They don't have the right whatever counts. So we have a hierarchy of cultures on the planet. Knowledge happens in some cities, not in other cities. If you want the domination stone, you tell one gender's better than the other gender. You create center-periphery relations. So this is the feminist and the Marxist reminding us of that. If you want to succeed in the domination stone, make sure you believe humans are better than nature. Make sure when you do your budgets, nature is an externality, not a real price, right? None of us are costing, well, this is pretty good, we have some nature here. We're not paying for the real cost of energy. It's to use. So now I've collected 3 stones in my quest for cosmic domination, right? The extinction stone, the domination stone, the inequity stone. The 4th one is the crucial one. Create a way of thinking which says nationalism is first. My nation, my religion, my. Now I have all the stones. Once you have all the stones, then you just click your fingers and everyone needs to die. Now you may think I'm being dystopian, but we know very well, I would say 50% of the global prime ministers believe this. You know the countries in the news every day, right? They've collected the stones, they're not sure how to use them yet. Hopefully they don't watch THANOS. I was working with a foundation that only did research for the 1,000-year period. So they funded us quite generously to do research on the year 3000. And this was their motto. And I remember this well. When they showed us, I said, oh my God, you've not seen Foucault, the other philosopher. The critical assumptions behind this. We know as futurists, the first thing we do, we always say, what's the hidden assumption? What's not being said? And you can see this painting. Look at the values. Goes from nature to space. Nature disappears. The sun is above who? The male. We go from Earth to space. So the core, we have nuclear energy leads the future. So this was the core assumptions about the year 3000. Look at the people in the images. They're philosophers without bodies. So what does this tell us about knowledge? Technology first. The mind first. Forget nature, forget well-being, forget who we are. Once you've collected those stones, basically you have the final piece of the puzzle. You convince everyone that the future is inevitable. One future, one nation, one gender, one religion, you have the future in your hands. So this is the brilliance of that movie, I am inevitable, he keeps on saying. And this is the future we're being sold daily. And our role, for me when I was 10, it was very clear. From all of sci-fi, I don't want that future. It was a planetary future, it was something else. So this is kind of where we're going with now. So this is our offering. Maybe THANOS is wrong. Maybe there's alternative futures, maybe we can stop him. This becomes, to me, our collective challenge. Can we as a community, with many millions of other communities, with many young people, create a different future? The first step is, of course, saying the future is not inevitable. There's alternative futures. For many people, that's a huge idea. I've had people in workshops break into tears. They just start crying. I said, why are you crying? I said, my whole life, they said there's only one future. I never heard the possibility of gender being switched, of identity being switched, of nation being switched. So this is the antidotes. What are the antidotes? Antidote 1 is a different imagination of the future. Look at this image. Yes, there's technology, but there's spirit. We're being guided by a different version of who we are. We're connected to history, to the indigenous. We have technology with nature. It's the earth growing, but still at the center. We're in space, but we're still earth-centric. So the imagination of the future sets up what's possible. Which imagination do we want? So now let's talk about the other stones. Are there antidotes to their stones? My argument is yes. The first is new humanism. Can I imagine myself outside of a religion, nation, and gender? Now this is tough. I notice with my Facebook friends, we're all friends until we talk about nation, religion, gender, then everyone hates each other. I have friends meditating 30, 40 years, are always in bliss until I mention one of those three. Then they become really nasty. So we're spiritual until it matters. So this is new humanism, and it's hard-earned. I look at my own biases. When do I become psychotic when it comes to nation? So this is saying we go outside ego, family, territory, religion, and even species. This is the transformation. What's antidote number 2 to identity? It's called a new type of leadership. My own teacher called it Sadvipra leadership. This is the protection of the weak as the world changes. Serving the most vulnerable. And what's most difficult is keeping money rolling. Right? If money is only in one of us, well, Sherman's happy, but the rest of us aren't. So a good economy, I mean, Sherman's already happy in any case, but the good economy, the money keeps rolling. So that, you have to have a global taxation system, a global maxi-mini. And we have to have people like us who innovate through ideas. We use ideas not to create dogmas, but ideas that keep on creating new ideas. So if you know my work on Sarkar, this is his offering that there's different archetypes in life. Wishan was fantastic. He said, if I want a better transportation system, I need to know the personas in Singapore. If I want a better planetary system, I need to know the global archetypes. And there are archetypes. The third antidote is the productivity revolution. My green friends say, no, let's just use less. My Gandhian friends say, no, use less. I would prefer we create more. I don't want to stop demand just because the first world reached a certain level. We create more services, more ideas, more visions. I have no need to have less. Now, I actually do have less, but that's a different issue in terms of holding on to things. So what does that mean? We know in terms of data, you have visioning plus meditation enhances productivity. If we want to increase productivity, we act the opposite of Jeff Bezos, right? Jeff Bezos, head of Amazon, the richest man in the world, he's reduced health care for his workers. Why would you do that? We know it's the opposite. Improved working conditions, productivity goes up. We know if we have cooperatives, productivity goes up. We know that. We know if you use AI wisely, productivity goes up. Yet less food wasted. More real energy. We can use AI to predict mental illness to stop suicides. I'm sure Mike will work on that soon, him and his alter ego, Athena. I finally said, Mike, tell us the truth. We know Athena is your other self. Stop lying and saying it's a robot. Embrace your inner Athena. And we know we need a high-low ratio. We want to protect the low through UBI, UBA, but we also need a high. I'm okay if John Sweeney makes $10 million a year. I'm less enthusiastic with $1 billion a year. So this is a global agreed upon move, and it has to be global. The fourth antidote is the transition to the new economy. We're in the middle of a grand transition, and we can see it emerging. We have Bharat with his book talks about it. Chofan talked about it. Rushdie's talking about it. They're all working with people. ADB is talking about it. This is making the shift, and Bangladesh is leading. Peer-to-peer energy co-ops, where we're trading the Uber of energy in every village in the world. My favorite ADB, well, I have many favorite ADB persons, but this is one of my favorite quotes. It's not due to a lack of stone that the Stone Age ended. We're still going to have other energy forms, but the old energy system is over. So what then is the priority? On the first day, someone said, well, once you've done your futures research, if you have $1 million, where are you going to put your money? For me, it's very clear, it's governance. Governance defines value, defines reality, defines how we do things. The governance that's global or planetary, that creates the future.
For me, APFN is about one thing and one thing only. It's to start the imagination of an Asian confederation by 2050. So I can see it emerging, and I think it will emerge, but I'm not sure. So I ask myself, why would an Asian confederation emerge, right? All of us work in tough situations with ministers, with NGOs. Myself, I will sometimes work with 10-year-olds. If you want a room full of tough clients, work with 20 10-year-olds and have them imagine 2050. So what's the incentive? Incentive one, there's financial advantage to a global Asian confederation. Incentive two, Asia doesn't survive without a confederation. I don't think there's a choice. Incentive three, Asia thrives. Incentive four, there's a burning platform. We know if we don't make the shift, we burn. We ran the CLA, the workshop, it was very clear. Either Asia makes an energy transition or the ship burns now. And it's not in the future, right? This is not 2030, this is 2019. When I talked about THANOS, he said, I am inevitable. Destruction is inevitable because he collected the stones. As futurists, we say the opposite. He is not inevitable, but there are choices. Choice one is the imagination of the great transition, the great jump, the evolutionary jump. Choice two is where many political leaders want to take us. Fragmentation by gender, by race, by nation, by ethnicity, and by resource power. We all know where that leads to. We can see everywhere in the world where that leads to. You don't have to be a refugee to know where that leads to. I remember when we moved when I was 5, and we kept on moving. We moved from Indiana to New York, to Geneva, to Malaysia, to Bangkok. And every country I moved to, every culture had one group they hated. Every culture. When I moved to Geneva, my Swiss friend said, we'll play with you, but if you play with those kids from Milan, you're not allowed to play with Swiss anymore. I said, what's wrong with people from Milan? Oh, tu ne sais pas? C'est pas possible. You don't know what they're like. I go, no, I don't know what they're like. Exactly, and I don't want to know. So this is the fragmentation. The integration is what Shakil was parting about, the greater story. So in my imagination of the next 500 years, here's the transition. I recommend you come up with your own. But our thing is, what is the next 500 years and what will be the transition? For me, it's very clear. A UBI, AI-led, gender partnership, end of the meat era, body-mind integration. Marcus Anthony has done a great PhD on that, renewable energies. And we're in the center of a hegemonic shift. It's pretty clear to me, Trump can say what he wants, the hegemonic shift has happened. So either you go gently or you fight it till the bitter end, but the hegemonic shift has happened. So what makes this period in history anxiety-driven, most of the people who come to my lectures, workshops, they say one thing, we're full of anxiety. We're full of fear. We don't know what's going to happen tomorrow to our investment strategy. We don't know if our kids are going to be beat up tomorrow. No one knows. So this transition is multiple transitions, and thus we feel fear. Getting a sense of the multiplicity helps us figure out where to go. And this is where we get Toynbee. At the end of every era, you have a creative minority. The creative minority comes in, and they help imagine the new future. Every agriculture era, industrial era, national era, if you look at the end of the era, there's always a creative minority. Is it Greta? Yes, it is. Is it the cultural creatives? Yes, it is. Is it the feminist revolution? Yes, it is. Is it NGOs? Yes, it is. Is it futurist people? Yes, it is. There's a group who figures out, do I stay in the old world or do I make the jump to the new? If you make the jump to the new, what happens? Well, you feel pretty weird, right? You're in 2050 and no one else is. So this is the issue of community, of creating communities of practice who help you jump. So this is futures there. So that's the macro part. Now on the micro part, in terms of our work, what creates success? My first speech when I was in Hawaii, it was to the Hawaii Judiciary, and the Chief Justice of Hawaii was there, and all the other justices. And I thought, I need to be smart. Within 10 minutes, the Chief Justice fell asleep. And then I learned that's the wrong way to be. And so I thought, now having done this since 1990, 84, I'm really thrilled no one is asleep. So thank you very much. Hopefully I've got better. So what then are some of the success factors? Factor one is mindfulness. When everything is changing, when there's anxiety and fear, you have the ability to slow down. Whether it's the Sufi tradition, Indian, Christian, it doesn't matter. The ability to just stop, be aware, and breathe. That's a key practice. If you can't do that, forget about doing futures. It's a waste of time. The people you work with will straight away see, this person is not present, he's a waste of our time. So that's step one. Step two, futures is a learning journey. I have so many clients come to me and say, Sohail, just tell us the F answer. Stop making us learn. Just tell us the answer, we'll pay you double. And I always say, I don't know the answer. We're on a learning journey. If you want to know the answer, you're in zero loop. You're the problem. Single loop doesn't work because the rate of change is so high. Double loop is learning about learning, and of course, narrative learning. The third key skill is challenge the used future. Look at this image, the first imagination of virtual education. What do you notice? I show this everywhere. Students are passive, right? So whether it's print-based or virtual, it's still the same meta issue, passive students. If you ask students to engage, why don't they engage? Well, there's reasons. 4, understand the disruptions. We know the world is shifting very quickly. Is it 3D printed clean meat? What is it? What are those disruptions? Work with groups to understand them. Now, this can be tough. In the CLA workshop, many of you have heard the story. When Peter Black, the vet for Ministry of Agriculture, we were working together, the future of 3D meat, future of new meat. And many of you have heard the story, but I'll say it again for those of you who haven't. I said, okay, if by 50% of all protein is cellular agriculture, we presented this in Rome, tell me what the scenarios are. The farmer said, well, scenario 1 is obvious. I said, what's that? Kill the vegans. I said, okay, what's scenario 2? Well, kill the scientists. What's scenario 3? Kill the coffee drinkers. Why? Well, because they're early adopters. You know, and the person in the room said, oh my God, we just wasted all our money on the workshop. Everyone's dead. So clearly the disruption creates fear. We have to work with the disrupted in solidarity with the farmers to help them get over the end of farming. So this is the mapping part. If, what's the result? What if, what's the result? We work with people not to tell them the future, but to look at impacts and then help them become mindful. Once you figure out the implications, the 6th superpower is the power of story. I mean, Shaquille, brilliant poem there. The story creates the new future. Now, why is story important? I was working with the largest legal firm in one country, and we looked at this data, right? Inequity. So we said, what's your metaphor? They said, our metaphor as lawyers is David fighting Goliath. I said, fantastic. They said, no, it's horrible. We're always losing now. All day we fight in court. We fight here, we fight there. We're exhausted. This fight can't go forever. I said, so what's the new story? He said, the polio vaccine. We want to change the rules so we don't have to be David fighting Goliath. We want a different narrative so we can win in a different way. So the metaphor changes the possibility. The narrative changes what you see. Change your story, change your future. But sometimes you have to be able to measure the new story. I'm a Jacinda fan, and what did she do? She told the new story in real-time action through compassion. But that's not enough. If I want a different New Zealand that's inclusive, that's productive, that's dynamic, that leads Asia Pacific, I have to measure it. So she walked her narrative with budget. Every workshop I do, I always look for one person at the end of it. The CFO, Chief Financial Officer. CEO can love it, the board can love it, everyone loves it. Does the CFO love it? If the CFO can't measure it, future doomed. Prime Minister Jacinda's already figured it out. We will measure the future we want to see. In our own family, we use a quadruple bottom line for every project. We've figured out what's most important in different ways to think. So she's done that. So they're focused on well-being as a national priority. So I always ask countries, is it just GDP or is it something else you wish to measure? So this goes now to the last part of it. There's external stones we collect, and there's inner stones. Inner stones are our ability to empower who we are, to create different futures for yourself. So we've had a theme. Rushdie started out with the Avengers. We've had our colleagues here talk about superheroes. I started out with the motorcycle being supported. So in this case, it's slightly cliche. It's slightly Hollywoodish. But it's, again, going back to a community trying to do something else. Now, of course, don't use Hollywood. Kamala Khan is the new Marvel hero now. There's Ultraman in Japanese history. And my favorite when we were working in Brunei is this guy here. I thought, what a gutsy guy. I'd be embarrassed to wear that uniform. He's walking the streets with this super Brunei person. I thought, this is amazing. So in our imagination, my last image for me putting this all together is, of course, the narrative. And Thanos' futures, as we found out, was disrupted by time. He could control space, he could control identity, he was unable to control time. I'm not saying go back, we're actually playing with time. If we do that well, we become the new Avengers. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Professor Sohail. So I think it was a good food for thought for finishing the 5th Asia Pacific Futures Network Conference. I think it was a very interesting ride in the last 2 days. This picture was not the official group picture, and some of you think you missed it. This was actually the people who didn't want to leave yesterday at 6 o'clock, so I took a picture of them in case we have to identify them.